a 1 of 232, 1 of 67 known to exist, 1 of 2 in this color and interior setup. These, to me, this is a holy grail car.
Hey, Scott, how are you?
Parker, thanks for showing up, man.
Thanks for inviting us down, man.
Oh, happy to see you. How was your trip?
It was good, it was good. Real easy driving.
Good.
Well, you did tell us that you had some cars to take a look at. And
yeah, come on in.
I know that you said you had a GSX, and oh, I didn't know it was white. Well, they only made these in what, 2 colors, right?
Well, originally there was the Apollo white and the Saturn yellow. And then from 1970 to 72, they started offering other colors, and there were even some custom colors. So at one point, there were several available.
So this is a 72.
This is a 1972. This is a 455 GS bucket seat automatic car. It's a GS done up with a GSX paint, because in reality, the white ones, they made a total of 4.
Oh, I didn't know that.
In 1972.
So this is a GS, but it was done up as a GSX.
Correct, because of the 4, 2 have vinyl tops, 2 do not, and they're too valuable to drive.
And what's the value on something like those? Because I'm not familiar with them, and that's kind of actually why we're here.
Yeah.
Is because Scott invited us down because he has several cars that I'm personally not familiar with as Buicks, and you are a Buick guy.
Well, I'm an A-body GM guy.
A-body GM guy.
So A-body GM, you're talking about your Chevelles, your Cutlass 442s, you're talking your Pontiac GTOs, Le Manses, and you're talking about your Buick GS or Skylark cars. So all of those, and I always like them, they're called GM intermediate body cars, and they're super popular because you have a back seat, but the car still presents as a sporty American car. It's not as large as getting into something on the platform of a Pontiac Grand Prix or something like that.
Do you think we could open the hood on this to see that 455?
Sure, certainly. And again, the garage is a mess, but you wanted to see it the way it is, so that's how we're looking at it.
That doesn't bother us. Some of the messiest people have the smartest minds.
Okay, I agree with that. They made 4, and you were talking about the value. If you had a documented on the GS registry, historical registry, Apollo white 1972 white GSX, one of the 2 with or without vinyl tops, you're looking at between $100,000 and $200,000 in value for that car. And if it were a stage 1 car, you would be way north of $200,000, $250,000.
And you do have a stage 1 car here.
I do have a stage 1 car that we're going to take a look at.
What is the difference between a GS and a GSX? Is there any differences on the outside or anything that would make it?
Yeah, that's a good point. So the biggest thing with a GSX to a GS car is any GS was a Ram Air car in 72.
Okay.
So if it was a GS 350
and that's these pieces
that's
right here.
This right here. This is a real fresh air hood.
Going down into here.
Correct. And there are water drains in the bottom so that if water got in from a rainstorm, they would actually drain out the bottom.
You see the holes in here? Actually, I did not know that.
Yeah, otherwise you would hydrolock your motor.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Then it's no good. So this car was a nice original car that was restored almost 3 decades ago. This is a very, very old restoration that a buddy of mine did that I graduated from high school with, and he had this car in his airplane hangar out in the Schenectady County Airport.
And that's where we're at, Schenectady,
Schenectady,
New York.
yep. So I purchased it from him after I had originally bought a very rare 1977 Can-Am. Pontiac Can-Am on a Le Mans chassis. They made 1,355, I think they made, of the Can-Am. So I bought one of those from him, and then I saw this car sitting in the corner under a cover, and it really intrigued me because I had mainly been a Pontiac A-body guy. And when I saw this and I learned more, because even when I was younger, the GSs were rare.
Yeah.
Buick was known for luxury, and when you saw a sporty Buick, it was rare. Just like finding a 442 Oldsmobile.
Now, they were kind of like bankers' hot rods back then, is the way I would...
Luxury hot rod.
Right.
Yep.
Can we take a look at the cow tag on this car?
Sure, absolutely.
Do you know anything about that? Because I'm not sure how to decode them for this car.
So this car was originally green.
Oh.
Because most of the cars in the 70 to 72 period were green or brown or gold. Those were super, super popular colors. So this was a meticulous restoration where everything was stripped, every part of the car was repainted, this Apollo white color. Now we talked about what was special about a GS or the difference to a GSX.
Sure.
So what you're looking for when you look at a GSX car, first of all, you're looking for the 455 power plant on a GSX. It only came with 455. The GSXs were only hardtops. There were no convertible GSXs.
No convertibles, gotcha.
Yeah, only hardtops. And The front spoiler, which this is a real fiberglass spoiler, they do now make it in ABS plastic.
That's this piece down here.
Yes, that's a very expensive piece, and that in fiberglass, the reason that they make the ABS now is most of these got damaged from parking lot incidents where you come up against a high curb, and it just blows that out, just like the front spoiler under an older Corvette, a C3 Corvette.
Sure.
It just crushes the whole front end. So that's the correct spoiler for it. And the other GSX trim is, this is completely color-coded to the car. The headlight rings, instead of being chrome in color, they are all painted, and the front nose cap in 72 is painted to match the hood, where this would normally be all chrome. And this color scheme here, this black with the red piping, and the way that it's set up from the nose back is very, very unique to Buick. In fact, online recently, somebody posted pictures of the original single white GSX prototype car.
Okay.
And the prototype car differs from the production GSXs slightly. The way that the rear spoiler was held on, the positioning of the stripes is pretty close but not exact. So on a GSX car, almost all of them have the hood tack.
Can we take a look at that?
Sure, if not all of them.
Do you know what that goes up to?
Yeah, the big blocks, because of the large rolling mass, have red lines that are much lower, generally around 5,000 or 5,200, whereas you can rev a small block up to 6,000.
Sure.
But they kind of top out earlier.
Now, is there any interior differences here for the GSX or the GS?
Yeah, so GSXs were mainly bucket seat cars. There was the potential, I believe, to get a bench seat option. I don't know if anyone, I haven't really seen any, but I heard that that was possible. And up on the dash pad on the right side, there was a GSX logo that went over where the Buick logo is there. They now reproduce that logo. They didn't for a long time. It's still very expensive. Most of the GSXs had the optional sport wheel.
Okay.
Any GS could have this wheel. It is kind of rare.
One thing I know about GSXs is that I believe the original 70 version, they don't have white interior. I think they only had black interiors.
Correct. As far as I know, later on when they diversified with the colors, I believe there was an ability to get a white interior in them. And I've seen some that were at the Buick GSX kind of roundup to get together that had some, I thought I saw some other interior colors, but I could be wrong.
Do we mind if we look at the spoiler?
No, not at all.
And you said these is different for the different years. Did I hear that correctly? Or they're all the same?
70 to 72 is all the same.
All the same,
Yeah,
okay.
The prototype car had a little bit of a different stanchion on it.
Gotcha, okay.
And this is very unique. Now, in 72, there was also an optional spoiler that mounted differently, which was a little, they called it a ducktail spoiler,
okay,
that mounted closer to the lid. They're super rare, and most cars did not have that option.
Well, now that we've gotten a chance to kind of go over this GSX clone here, can we take a look at the regular GS car that you have over here?
Certainly, but there's one neat feature I want you to take a look at.
Absolutely, sure.
In 1971 and 1972, Buick made 300 cars with an option called N25.
Okay.
N25 was a bumper with cutouts for the chromed exhaust tips to go through the bumper. Super rare.
We have to put the door up for that?
This car has it. I'm going to put the door up just so it's easier for you to see.
Absolutely. It. So Scott, while this door's coming up over here, you were saying that the bumper has cutouts. Is that correct for the exhaust?
Yes, this is called an N25 option for 1971, 1972. Oh, yeah. Now these chrome tips are finally remanufactured. They are expensive, but they're now at least available.
Okay.
And these original bumpers, even crushed, are going for hundreds and hundreds of dollars. Restored, they're going for $1,000 to $2,000.
I don't think I've ever seen a bumper like that now that we're talking about it.
Yep. Now, normally these tips are mounted closer in. When I put the new tips on it, I had them brought out further because I hate exhaust fogging up and getting on the bumper.
Discolor, yeah.
Yeah, so I pulled them out a little bit. Some guys like it, some don't. Purists want it mounted closer in, but I don't like the exhaust on it. And there's only one difference between 71 and 72. The bumper is the same. In 72, this was the energy absorbing way that they got around the law.
Yeah.
It's nothing but a piece of rubber. In 71, it's the same bumper. Without this, it has a chrome trim instead.
And before we move on here, what was the option code number for this, you said?
N25.
N25. And now that we've taken a look at that car, this car is very similar. This is also a 72 GS, right?
Correct. This is a GS 350 car. And the neat thing about...
so it's a small block car.
Small block car, also ram air, which you can see by the air cleaner. These air cleaners go for several $100s or more if you can find one. And one of the things that I didn't mention on this 72, but I'd like you to look at, it's a 1 year only.
Sure.
Only 72 has the left-hand ram air tube triangular.
Triangular. Okay.
70 and 71 are square on both sides. And the reason that the 72 is triangular is to meet California emissions. California emissions in 72 had an air pump that injected air into the cylinders, and very few states other than California used it. But to be consistent, every car in 72 that was ram air from Buick had this. Now there's one other thing quickly just to mention.
Sure.
In 1970 and in 1972, Buick used the same metal, and I'm going to show you, ram air ducts. In 1971, they went to a fiber-based plastic duct. They didn't hold up. They cracked, especially if you did any cold weather driving. And if you look at any car today that has not been restored, those ducts are brittle. They're basically unusable. So 70 and 72 are steel. 71 was a fiberglass-based plastic. So going back to the 72 GS 350, one of the things I love with the Buick GS Historical Society is they have the production by color.
Oh, they do?
Yes.
Okay.
There are 601 GS 350 ram air convertibles made with an automatic transmission, and there were, I think, 36 were made with a 4-speed, and there were 1 or 2 that were 3-speed transmission.
Well, let me pause it there, because
Sure.
this is probably going to sound like a dumb question. I see both of these cars have disc brakes on them, or power brakes in the front. Was that a GS thing? Did they all have power brakes? Or?
Believe it or not, it was optional.
Oh, it was optional.
It was optional. You could, 90-something% had power brakes.
Okay.
Now, the interesting thing that, now that you mention that, is this is power disc brakes. I believe this car is power drum brakes.
Power drum, yep.
Yeah, and the 70 that we're going to go look at, the Stage 1 car, is power drum brakes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we'll take a look. Great question. So the other thing about them is, in 1972, every single GS convertible is a bench seat car.
Oh.
Yeah, there's rumors.
That's a fun fact for the audience. That is cool.
There are rumors that there was a executive's car made with bucket seats, but all GS convertibles in 72 are bench seat cars. Even the 4-speed cars are bench seat cars. And this also has the optional sport wheel in it. And as I said, this is one of 101 made in fire red. This is the second most popular color in a GS 350 in 1972. The most popular was fire orange.
What's the horsepower numbers on the 350? Do you know those?
Yeah, I do. It's sad. In 1972, the horsepower on this 350 is 190 horsepower.
190?
Yeah, it's not a lot.
I knew they were going downhill.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure where it was
They're
at.
basically just detuned.
Yep.
You can go through, you can open them up, you can change the jetting in the carburetor, change your advance curve, or put a higher lift cam in it, and you can easily get back into 325 horsepower without blinking. So this car came out of Hudson, New York, and I'm really pleased because it is so well kept. I didn't have a lot of body work to do on it. The rear quarters had just a slight amount of rust, but because the car is a valuable car, and the original top, actually, I just had replaced on it. It was not bad, but it had shrunk, so I had a new top put on. I did use up my very rare NOS quarter panels that I had so that the car would be perfect. There's no Bondo in it. These are GM factory quarter panels that were in a guy's basement in the original GM boxes in Western Massachusetts.
And I bet those were not cheap.
$1,900 for 2 quarter panels, which actually was a good price because recently, for the blue car that we're going to look at, I found the only other pair of quarter panels in Ann Arbor, Michigan, in an automotive executive's shop that he's not going to end up using. and that was $3,500 now for the same quarter panels that I paid $1,900 for several years ago.
Now I see the tag here. Are they the same as a Camaro, basically? I see kind of they are.
Yeah, it's a normal GM kind of naming convention.
So 75 would be the color for the red, right?
Yep.
And then A would probably be the convertible white top.
Yep.
And then 04B would probably be January, February, March, April, and then second week of April.
Yep.
And then what is the next set of numbers here? The A65.
Oh, it's a trim code, I believe. I would have to take a look on it.
Like a special option or something like that?
Yeah, I think it has to do with the standard white bench interior.
Oh, okay,
I think
gotcha,
that's the
okay.
color combination on it. I could be wrong, but I think that's it.
It's online. I
Yep.
just have never really gone
Yep.
over one for a GS before.
Yep. Yeah,
I see the bike behind us here, the orange crate, and I see that it looks like it's got all the goodies on it and the original tire on it, right? The rear tire back here.
absolutely. Good call picking that up. This is a late 1970, early 71 Schwinn orange crate with the rear disc brake option on it. It has the pogo stick rear seat that has shocks on it that goes up and down.
Yep.
It has the original Schwinn optional rear light, original Schwinn optional rear bag. The only accessory missing on this is they did make a blinker setup that would go under the rear running lights on the back. The rear tire is original. The front is a repop, but I have the original. It's just very cracked from age. And the racing flag mirror, I have that option for it too, but it didn't fit when I put it by the ceiling. So I took the mirror off. But this is an incredibly rare,
badass.
that is the Stingray speedometer. That is the correct one for an orange crate. That's a Schwinn Stingray speedometer, and it being from the bike world, you know that. And this, instead of having battery operated lights, which most of them did, this actually has the generator on the back side. So it runs the Schwinn generator light setup, which is really rare on an orange crate, apple crate, pea picker, or cotton crate.
Lemon peeler.
Lemon peeler, yep.
Yep.
Pea picker, yep.
Well, we can't. Oh, go ahead. I was going to say we got bikes over there.
Yeah, the other two, and the reason that these are on display, I own a lot of bikes, but that red Playbike 88 by Columbia, made in Westfield, Massachusetts, and I grew up in Central Mass, that was the same exactly as the bike that I had in 1969. That was the bike before I went to Schwinn 10 speeds and everything.
Yep.
I had that bike, and that is a 1969 example. And that rear bumper thing on it is super rare. That's so that when you pop wheelies, the bumper back will hit, instead of hitting the back of your seat when you flip over.
Yep.
And then the one in the green is super early, super rare. That's and by the way, the red one has a 2-speed rear end in it. This one is a twist grip 3-speed shifter on the end of the grip, and this is 1966. And I have a third one in gold that has this 3-speed quick shifter on it.
Kind of like the Schwinn over here.
Yeah. And while we're over on this wall, that's the hood scoop, aluminum 1979 hood scoop off the Z28, T-top Z28 my wife and I took on our honeymoon in 1984. That's a scoop off the actual car.
Can't ever mistake Camaro pieces.
No,
on
you
this
cannot.
channel.
You cannot.
Well, one thing that I just did not expect you to have over here is this Levi's edition Gremlin, but normally you find them and they're not in that great of shape. This one's looks like perfect condition.
There's a great story with this car. When my wife and I met in January 1981 at a gig my band was playing in a bar, she had a 77 baby blue Gremlin that she had bought brand new. And I worked when we started dating to immediately get her out of that car because she was having quite a bit of problem with the car. So I got her into a 77 LT Camaro, a burgundy LT Camaro.
Okay.
And I coasted that Gremlin in, not running that well, and got it into the dealership and traded it in. I had promised her that all these years, if I came across a worthy Gremlin, I would get it for her. And so looking online one night, as many men do on the toilet, looking at the internet,
Sure.
I found this in Vermont. I contacted the dealer. It came out of a divorce settlement in Pennsylvania. Oh. If you look, the Pennsylvania plate is still on the back, and it
Okay.
still has a Pennsylvania title. And believe it or not, I wanted the Levi's, of course, and I wanted one optioned out as much as possible and in good original condition. This has had one repaint, has no rust, never had any rust, and when I pop the hood, you won't believe the condition of it. It has the 262 larger motor instead of the smaller 6. It has factory air conditioning, power steering, power brakes, AM, FM, AMC original radio.
This has air conditioning.
Yes, this has air conditioning.
And they all... Okay, so yeah, here is the air conditioning. And what I was going to ask you, you think this little tray down here with the air conditioning, do you think that they all got that, or you think that's specific for air conditioning cars?
You know, I'm not sure if you didn't get the AC in 75, if they ran the regular ductwork through it. It may have or may have not, but...
Maybe a Gremlin guy could answer that for us in the comments section.
Yeah, but this is a really well option. It has tilt wheel.
Yeah, I see that, yep.
Yeah, and it presents incredibly well. And
I want to show them the Levi's badge in the seats here.
yeah, and it has 78,000 original miles.
Yeah, you can see the Levi's badge, kind of like the jeans back then.
And if you look at it, has the optional roof rack. Most of them have the rack, but again, it's in very nice shape. But some don't have the rack. And if you come around to the rear, one of the rare things that this car has. Because this was sold two ways. This was sold with and without a rear seat.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, you could get it as a two-door, basically a two-seater, and then you paid an optional price to get the rear seat, and eventually it became standard. But this is a fold-down rear seat, and believe it or not, this spare tire presented this way with this cover is an option also. Now let's talk about why these cars don't exist. And the reason that these cars don't exist and they're so hard to find is the fact that this is the same wheelbase as what a lot of sprint car drivers wanted back in the day.
Sure.
So every junkyard Gremlin that ever got delivered to the crusher yard never got crushed. They got bought by stock car guys. And the Gremlin bodies were used for another 20 years on stock cars. So it's incredibly hard to find a Gremlin that exists, and that's why ones needing to be restored are almost impossible to find.
You mind if we open the hood?
No, not at all.
Oh, wow, yeah, there she is. And so what engine is in this one again?
Yeah, the base engine in a Gremlin in 1975 was a 232 straight i6. Okay. And then the optional motor was the 258 that you see here. This is quite a peppy car engine setup for the weight of the car and for the wheelbase of the car. And back in the day, believe it or not, where Vegas and other types of what were called compact cars in the day had a lot of negative on them, like the Pintos and everything.
Sure.
A lot of folks found this was quite sporty to drive, and the interior room felt bigger than the car actually was. And this is incredibly well optioned. You'll see that it's got factory AC.
Yep.
It has power brakes, power steering.
Yep, here's the pump down here for sure.
Yep.
And while I'm looking on the inside, I mean, the aprons on this car look perfect. I mean, there's no rust. It doesn't even have surface rust on it.
No, this is a great survivor of that era, and there aren't a lot of them, as we said earlier. Even to have the option of full tint glass, because it is an AC car, is extremely rare with the tilt wheel and everything else. When I saw this car, I knew that this is the one that I wanted to get, and I had been looking for a very, very long time. Hey, welcome to the barn.
Oh, my goodness. Hey, you guys do got some cars in here, don't you? Well, that looks like a 70 GTO Judge right here.
Yeah, 455 4-speed.
What's the story on this one?
I've owned it since 2009. It's a real GTO, and it's got Judge stripes on. I did it up as a Judge, but it's not a Judge.
Oh, it's not a Judge. Okay.
No.
Now, what would the red be called on this?
This is called Cardinal Red.
Cardinal Red. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And again, same kind of thing that if it were a real Judge, you wouldn't drive it.
Oh, yes. They've definitely come up in value for sure.
Yeah, in fact, I'm having an issue with the pigeons in here, so this car is coming out of here.
And I see it's got a bunch of stickers on here. It says Adirondack Nationals, and that's like a local show to here, you would say, or?
It's pretty well, it's a local show, but it grabs national attention.
Okay.
And I mean, the Count from Counting Cars was here.
Oh, cool.
I think a few years ago. and there are 1,500 cars in the show, and about 25,000 cars show up for the week or the weekend.
You mind if we open it up?
No, not at all.
Oh, AC car too.
Yep,
And so this is a 455.
correct.
And is this what came in the GTO originally, or did you put this in here?
No, it's a 455 car. M21 Muncie 4-speed, and the AC's not hooked up, and the rest of the ram air, since I painted it, has not been put back in yet. I have all the fiberglass ram air to go in it.
And what is your plan, Scott, with something like this?
Oh, I drove it for years and years, and
okay.
just that I sold the big shop that I had everything in, and until I build my new building, I was just storing it out here.
And I see on the back here it says that it was sold in Beard, Massachusetts.
Barry.
Oh,
Barry,
Oh, okay.
Massachusetts.
Beard was the name of the dealer, and Barry is the, I see it there.
Yeah.
Barry, Mass.
Yeah.
that is very, very interesting.
Yeah, it's a super clean car, and it's very well optioned. This particular car has AC, full gauge package, tack on the hood, tint glass, bucket seats, console, 4-speed, fiber optic ashtray, trunk, under dash, and glove compartment light kit.
You mind if I open it up?
No, go ahead.
Okay, I didn't know it was a 4-speed.
Yep.
You got the Tiger back there and everything.
And it has the Formula steering wheel, which is also very, very rare, mostly only seen in Trans Ams.
I was gonna say it reminds me of a Trans Am.
Yeah, that's a factory option, and it has variable ratio power steering with front disc brakes, which is a kind of rare option.
Now,
Yep.
I'll shut the door here, and the car will start over
Sure.
this way. I want to kind of get back here and get him a better shot of it from all the way back here. Oh, my bad there, Scott. This is actually the car that we were invited up here. We came here to see, and this is
Yeah.
the '71 Buick GS Stage 1. And for those that are not familiar with this car, Scott, can you kind of run down the checklist of why this is an important car?
Yeah, we're all out there looking for what we call holy grail cars.
Right. Yep.
These would be L88 Corvettes. These are Super Birds.
Copo Camaros.
Copo Camaros, right. There's a list of cars that we all would like to have that were really never seen back in the day because they were so low production.
Right.
And on the Buick side, because I am a GM A-body guy, I really wanted to try to find something in that vein. And this particular car was actually in a barn not 8 miles from here.
Really?
And the sticker in the windshield for the inspection for New York State is 1980. I have the registration. The registration is a 79 or 80 was the final year.
Okay.
And believe it or not, being in the barn, the raccoons got in because they had the window down and bit the seats up.
Oh.
Yeah, the actual interior was in very nice shape until the raccoons got to it.
This was an automatic car.
This is an automatic console car with pearl white interior, which is called T185 is the option code. T185. And the color is Gulfstream Blue Metallic.
And you were telling me that they only know of, what, 1 or 2 of those?
Yeah, there is, they made a total of 44 GS convertibles in Gulfstream Blue. But of that, 14 potentially could have been Stage 1 convertibles because all Stage 1s were built in Detroit.
Okay.
And only 14 of the blue ones were built in Detroit that year. And of that, there are only 2 known to exist with the pearl white interior, bucket seats, which is T185,
Sure.
with the Gulfstream Blue that are Stage 1s. The other car is a 4-speed car that exists, and that sold 3 years ago at auction for $255,000.
Yeah, I have seen the auction results for Stage 1s, and if you're not familiar with them, there's something that'll come across the stage, which they don't do very often, and they'll surprise you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely bring 200, 250. That's very common for these cars. Do you mind if we open the hood on
No,
this
not
one?
at all.
Now, I remember you were saying the hood on the 70s has the metal vents.
Like the 72.
Yeah, and the 71s were the plasticky ones,
Yep.
right?
Yep. Yeah. In fact, the Buick Stage 1 registry, which this car is now on.
Okay.
This was sold new in New Jersey. I have the original build sheet, and I have the documentation from the Buick Historical Society documenting that this car is today as it was sold brand new. Right down to, if you look on, look on the passenger side, there is a stainless trim down the edge of the door. There's a door guard on the back of the...
Oh, right here, right here.
Yep.
Yep.
And so the one on the driver's side is missing, except it's in the trunk.
Oh, so you still have it?
Yes, so that's original to how the car was sold. And the gentleman that purchased this, that I bought it out of his estate, bought it in the mid-70s. And it has, we could check the mileage, but it's very low. And he stored it outside for 4 years and then brought it inside. And it's been inside since 1980 or 81. And luckily, all of the interior products are all reproduced. But if you've got a light on that,
door
you
card
can...
is just rough, huh?
Yeah, they tore them apart, the animals. And the problem with quite a few cars in his collection where the windows were left down, raccoons got in and just chewed the interiors right up.
Well, one thing I was noticing while I was standing on the other side is the bumpers. You had mentioned the bumpers on the GSX back there had the rubber piece, and this one does not.
Does not. And there was no through the bumper exhaust in 70.
Okay, so
it's
this
only 71, 72, that N25 option.
Okay, so no bumper here.
And this has 29,559 original miles on it.
You mind if we show that light in there and get
Nope,
the camera
go ahead.
in there? What do you think of that gauge setup in the GS? I always kind of like those.
Yeah, I do.
A little bit different than everything else out there, but we'll go ahead and open the hood on this.
And having
kinda show 'em.
bucket seats and a console is always such a nice thing to have.
And I mean, these were not, were these cheap cars back then?
No, these were quite expensive. This was about $4,800. I gotta find the thing on it. It should be down here. I don't know where it is.
And you can get a Z28 for $3,800.
Yeah, that GTO, I have the original build sheet on that. That was $4,400
Okay.
in 1970.
Man, that is a heavy hood.
Yeah.
I didn't expect it to be that heavy.
Yeah.
So like you said earlier, there's the square one on this side.
Yeah.
And one thing I do know about GS's is that the valve covers were chrome.
Yeah, Stage 1 cars had chrome valve covers.
And what are the statistics or the stats on a Stage 1 car compared to a regular GS? Do you happen to know that?
Sure, you're talking 500 foot-pounds of torque.
Oh, wow, that's
We have 490 to 500.
More than the Chevelle 454 that year, I believe?
Very similar. I know that my 70 LS Corvette that I had 500 foot-pounds of torque also. So they were all in that 490 to 500 in torque.
That's
and
the bracket that we're batting in when we're talking about
and we're
this
talking
car.
360 horsepower.
Yeah.
But they were notoriously underrated so that the insurance company would allow younger guys to drive them. Otherwise, the insurance would be too expensive. So in reality, this was putting out a lot of horsepower, well over 400 horsepower.
Well, let's take a look at the engine bay here because I don't think that the audience is really going to get the chance to see a barn find GS Stage 1 in this condition. And it looks to me like everything here is kind of correct, right?
Yeah, now my son and I actually, before we purchased the car, removed the air cleaner, ran the numbers on the carburetor and the distributor, which are specific to a Stage 1 car. And so the original distributor and carburetor are on it. Now, why is that unusual? Back in the day, we would have notoriously hot rodded these cars. We would have put a Holley carburetor on it.
Thrown away.
We would have put a Mallory dual point ignition system back then, or converted over to HEI. So all that would be lost. So what collectors want today is they want that, plus they want matching numbers. And in a Stage 1 car, the three numbers that match are the engine block, the transmission has a partial serial number that matches, and the posi only. They only came with posi with Stage 1, 10 bolt, whereas this 455 Pontiac has a 12 bolt in it.
Yep.
The GS's and Buicks never did 12 bolt. Even their most stout motors came with 10 bolt rear ends.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, very, very specific. So this has power steering, power brakes, but as I said, this runs the power drum brakes in 1970. So this car got bumped in a little bit from being in storage all these years, but I'm going to probably reuse the majority, if not all, the panels.
I was going to say, they don't look too bad.
No, we're doing some light work.
You could bring this piece out right here. Real
but
easy.
Remember how I said the GSXs have this color
Yeah,
coded?
color-coded, yep.
Yep, and on the GSs, even the Stage 1s, if it's not a GSX, they actually have the chrome. And the other neat thing on this is...
I just want to show them the logo
Sure.
because they're not going to see that very often. And I wanted to ask you about the red painted drum brakes down there. Is that a thing? Or
that is, yeah. They
that's
were
a
red
thing?
drums.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
It stands out when you're here in person.
Yep.
You see that.
Yeah, they're heavy duty drums, and they were painted factory red. The other interesting thing on this car is that this has the optional...
The back ones are done like that too.
Yeah, this has the optional GS Sport wheels, and these are on the build sheet. Most of these cars came with hubcaps.
Hubcaps, okay.
But this particular car did not come with white letters. It came with an actual white sidewall tire.
Now, do you know the history of the owner on this car? 'Cause
Yeah,
I see it says GE. I didn't know
Yeah,
maybe
he
if
was
it was
a General Electric employee.
I was going to say, I didn't know if it was
Yeah.
an executive or something. Or
Yeah, no, he
an
just worked at
employee.
GE. In fact, the 66 Oldsmobile Tornado that I got from him also had the GE. That's a parking permit sticker.
Oh, okay, that
And
makes sense.
had the same sticker in the window. And yeah, and you know what's funny? That's original top, of course.
I like it. Still has the dust on it.
I didn't touch any of it. In fact, I was reached out to when I put a picture of it on Facebook by a couple of organizations that wanted me to bring this to national Buick events where they had a whole row of barn find untouched cars, and they wanted me. They would buy the spot for me if I would get it there. If I would bring it to them in an enclosed trailer, they would love people to see that you truly can still find a buying car. I've been fortunate to find a few in my life.
Yep.
This is one of those, and I will call a 1 of 232, 1 of 67 known to exist, 1 of 2 in this color and interior setup. To me, this is a holy grail car.
And it's almost harder to find than like a Superbird.
Yeah.
It's harder to find than a Copo Camaro. I mean, they made less of these than those cars.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, all the Copos in total, if we're doing the math that way.
And
but
I've owned, less desirable rare cars. I mean, I've owned a 70 Chrysler Newport convertible. They made 1,101 of that car.
Okay.
For a big production car to make only 1,100 of them, and then when you get down by color, maybe a couple of hundred. But this is rare. This is 232, 67 known, and as you said, when they come up at auction, I watched a Mecum auction about 2 years ago, and they had 371s come up in a row.
I believe we're talking about the same auction.
And the gold one was no sale at 110,000. The other one was no sale at 135,000. I think the only one that sold of the 371s went for about 155,000.
150, okay.
Yeah, I just found it interesting. And by the way, those were all bench seat cars. Very rare. 70, you get more with buckets. But once you get into 71, and as I said, 1972, there are no GS convertibles with bucket seats.
Like the red one you got.
Correct, yes.
Well, I just want to shake your hand here and say thank you, Scott, for showing us this car, because this is the car that we drove all the way up here to check out and see, because I don't know where to find another one. I know where a lot of cars are, but I don't know where one of these are.
Yeah.
Why don't we go ahead and take a look at some of the other cars that you have here in the row, and this one looks like a Cadillac, correct?
Yes, this is an original paint, original top, original interior.
Is this the last year for the convertible?
Yep, 76 Eldorado.
That's what I thought.
It has 60,000 miles on it. A friend of mine ordered it in late 75 and took possession in December 75. And this also, it's got to come out of here. This original lacquer paint is starting to show its age a little bit, but believe it or not, it does polish up well. It runs incredible. And if you pop open the door, you'll see it has a beautiful leather interior.
And the bicentennial license plate there.
Yep.
Now, these are also cars that auction that will surprise you.
Yes. What's funny is they were stuck at 12 to 14 grand for years.
Yep, for a long
now,
time.
Now, mid-20s.
Yep.
A car like this will bring $25,000 at auction.
That has the most comfortable seats you'll ever sit in your entire life.
Yeah, I paid $7,600 for it when I bought it years ago.
Is it an award-winning car on the front there at all?
Well, that shows
Just-
how many other Cadillacs you've owned. That's a multi-year placard, and I've owned many Cadillacs, so I put that on there.
Okay.
And then the other is a Schenectady badge for the auto club. My friend who owned a butcher shop is the one that ordered it new.
Oh, so you know the original owner?
Oh yes, I was in the Cadillac Club with him. When he passed away in 1990, I lost track of the car. He was not married. The family sold all of his possessions incredibly quickly, which was disappointing. And he had a 41 Cadillac 60 Special in this, and I used to drive this to car shows for him when my wife and I were dating in the early 80s. I have pictures of my wife and I with this car in 1981.
Holy cow.
Yeah, so when I found it again up on Saratoga Lake, I had to have it.
What I want to do is bring my camera guy back here,
Yep.
and I kind of want to show him that we have 3 cars here that are all 2-door cars.
Yes.
In other words, we have this Triumph Spitfire right here, and you can see how small this car is compared to me. You can see the Buick GS Stage 1 there, and then this Cadillac is a monster 2-door car. I mean, how long do you think that car is? 20,
That's about 21 feet.
21 feet?
Yeah, and it's incredibly nimble, even though the horsepower was low in 76 on the last year for the 500 cubic inch motor. It really defies what you would think it would drive like. It drives very quick for a 1976 automobile. I'm surprised when I drive it how quick it drives. And next to it is my 69 Air Grabber 4-speed Roadrunner.
Yep.
This was a local race car for 20 years. And then the gentleman was restoring another Roadrunner he owned for his son, so he sold this one to fund the project because he had one already done. And I picked this up several years ago. Actually, I haven't even driven it since 2013, so it's been 11 years since I've even driven the car.
383 car?
383 Magnum, Air Grabber, and I don't have my Air Grabber stuff installed. We'll see that when we open it because the Carter original carburetor that came on, the AFS Carter, needed to be rebuilt. So I pulled it off, and short term, I bought a Thunder Series Edelbrock carburetor.
Okay.
So I put the Edelbrock on it to drive it while the other was being rebuilt, and I just never put it back on. But it's an inch taller than the factory carburetor, so you can't fit with the fiberglass. So I removed the fiberglass.
I was going to say, do you mind if we open it
Nope,
up?
go ahead.
Oh, wow. It's pretty sanitary under there. Looks correct.
Yep.
Yeah, and that still would be a big block, being a 383.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
Has it got its fender tag on it over there?
It does. Showing it's a B5 blue car, no vinyl top.
And that's a pretty desirable color on these
B5
cars.
blue is incredibly desirable.
Yep.
Yeah, everybody wants it. And the fact that it never had a vinyl top, most of them did.
I see it's got a 2-speed wiper motor on it.
Yep, correct manifolds. I'm about that. I'm not a headers guy. I like to run things the way they were.
Well, that's one thing I noticed whenever you open the hood is it didn't have headers on it. Does it still go meep?
Yes, of course it does. Battery's dead.
Oh, the battery's dead?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it's a meep car. Yeah, and there's the horn over there. And if you guys slide down there and open the door, you'll see that this is.
Well, it's a pretty tight fit in there. I
Well,
didn't
we'll
want
see
to.
when we get down here. I'll at least put the window down. Yeah, and I was in the midst of switching out the shifter, so it's kind of partially disassembled. And that's the sport wheel also for it. I don't have the horn on it right now. But that's a bench seat 4-speed car. Again, super desirable. Bench seat with a 4-speed.
Well, can we talk about this Continental behind us here? Because I think the Continental market is just exploding right now.
It is after Entourage.
Right, and this happens to look like an original car.
It is an original car.
My buddy has an original one that's
Yeah.
a 63, I believe.
This is a 62.
Okay.
And this was owned by a local businessman since 1977. He had this car before he met his wife. And had it, all of his kids' weddings, it was all in all of them. He passed away. He was a friend of ours, and he also leased me office space when I needed it for parts of my business. So I appraised the car for the family, thought I would never see it again, and they called me back months later and said they didn't want to sell it on the open market. They wanted me to have it. So they came up, and I had to explain to them, I'm not a car dealer. I'm a guy. So we came up with a price that was palatable for me.
Sure.
And I loved the car, and it had been in 6-year storage, and the diaphragm and the fuel pump had dried out. So there are no fuel pumps for a 430 motor that sit over the front of the motor in this year.
Sure.
In the whole country. There are zero. So you have to buy a rebuild kit, and you have to rebuild it. There is no other choice.
Well, that's the thing with these cars is there's not there's not reproduction parts for them at all.
None.
In other words, if you're trying to build one of these, you have to know somebody that has 5 of them in their backyard so that you can get parts for them.
Right, and the 6 motors and 10 solenoids.
All the solenoid,
put the top together.
Yep.
But this is a wonderful car. That's the original interior.
I see that. I see
Yeah.
that. I like actually how it has all the cracks in it.
Yeah, it's an AC
I
car.
hate to sit on it. You might split one in half or
Yeah,
something.
well,
But
I drive it, I sit on it, and it's on the road actually. I drove it here, and the only reason the top isn't up is one of the final little motors, unlike a Thunderbird convertible,
it clamps it down.
won't screw down. On the
Yep.
T-Bird, the 65 T-Bird I had, you push it and you clamp it. So I'm waiting for a part to replace that motor. So we're covering to keep the pigeon shit out of it.
look how just ornate this car is. Power windows.
Yep.
Power windows
Yep.
for a convertible.
And when you look at the values online, the only thing that they ask for is AC, non-AC, and this is an AC car. And this is a tilt wheel car. This is a cruise control car, which is extremely rare.
I just think that if you're looking for something to run around in the summer
Yeah.
and you have the means, this
Yeah.
is definitely something you could throw the
Yeah.
family and the dog in.
Yep.
And,
So we
and
will
have fun.
strip it and we will repaint it and we will drive it. I mean, this paint job is from '79.
I see that. Yep. Is there anything else underneath the tarp over here? Or?
Yeah, it's not mine, but another gentleman who keeps a car in here has a '69 Camaro.
There's a 69 Camaro under here.
There's a '69 Camaro on it. It's been sitting there for
We're not allowed to take the tarp
a
off?
decade. Well, maybe when we turn the camera off, we could take a look at it. But I will pop this for you if you'd like to see.
Yeah, I'd like to see the 430 on it for sure.
Well, that's not going to open right now. The
knob came off?
Set screw was loose.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay.
We're not going to be able to get
Not
them
going to
off.
do that. No. Yeah.
Well, that's okay.
But yeah, so this actually, I drove it in here. I had a wonderful time. I drove it a whole summer, and really enjoyed the car.
Well, Scott, I do want to just say thank you
Yep.
for inviting us up here and showing us all of the cars here you have in this collection and back at your house.
Yep. Thank you.
And I want to say just thank you for the audience because I've been trying to find those holy grail barn find cars. And even though we're not here to purchase it, just to get it on camera and show that it exists, I think is significant.
Well, I appreciate that. And just one quick story for anybody out there when you're trying to find something and you're all about the back story of it that adds to it for the value for you. I do just want to turn your attention to that Triumph for 1 minute.
Sure.
That Triumph came out of a family Citroen dealership.
A Citroen dealership.
A Citroen dealership in upstate New York.
Okay.
It came in on trade, only a couple years old, and the owner of the dealership maintained this car for his wife for decades and decades. And eventually, when the interior went, somebody put a set of Mazda seats in it, which is normal. A lot of guys do. I have the original seats.
They fit now?
Yeah,
Okay.
they fit nice. But this car, with all the documentation, including 2 binders of every service ever performed on the car, came with it when I purchased it.
Actually, now that I'm looking at it, it doesn't look like that bad of a car.
It is in pretty rust-free condition. There's a little rust on the little bottoms of the quarters where they sell that reproduction piece, which I'm going to do.
Sure.
You know, I used to be an MG kind of guy. I had 2 Fiat Spiders, 124 Spiders back in the day, a 70 to 72. I loved them as runaround cars. And this thing drives awesome.
I'm sure it does. We did a video down in Tennessee, and a guy took me for a ride in one, and we set my camera guy back here.
Yeah.
And it was a fun little car.
Yeah.
They're small. They don't go too fast, but you feel like you're going 200 miles an hour when you're going 60.
You do. And the fact that they're so open and easy to work on, we lift that up, press that down. Yep.
Right there. Yep.
There's nothing to them.
Little 4-cylinder in there.
Yep. This is the 1500 motor, not
Okay.
the 12. It's a 1500. And
Is
the
there a
only
way to tell the difference?
I'm not quite sure, except that I know it's a 15 for 73.
Gotcha.
The only thing that I would like to do, and I have been looking online to purchase, is the 2 barrel manifold.
Okay.
So they get really peppy if you put the two to get a 4-barrel option on them.
Okay.
They zing pretty good.
So in case somebody has one of those and they want to sell it, get a hold of us here at Backyard Barn Finds at info@backyardbarnfinds.com, and we'll get you in contact with
I would
Scott.
love a manifold, 2 carburetors, and some air cleaner covers.
Absolutely. if someone lets me know, you'll surely know.
All right. Well, listen, thanks. This has been a pleasure.
Awesome, Scott. Well, my name is Parker with Backyard Barn Finds, and if you found value in this video, please give us a like or a subscribe, and remember to have a great day.